Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am the Deputy City Clerk with the City of Asheville. One of our primary duties in the City Clerk's office is to serve and support the city's boards and commissions. If you are watching this, you are most likely a newly appointed city board member. So first, I would like to begin by saying congratulations on your new appointment, and we thank you for your service. To begin, throughout this presentation, we will use the terms board, commission, and committee interchangeably throughout. This short video will serve as an orientation to the city's boards and commissions, functions, and processes, but please know that the City Clerk's office will consist of me as Deputy City Clerk and Jerri Goldberg as Assistant Clerk, who you will hear from shortly, as well as the City Clerk, Maggie Burleson, are always available for you if you should have any questions. You can always contact us by emailing boards@asheville.nc.gov. During this orientation, we will provide you a brief overview of roles and responsibilities of staff and board members and the city structure. We will also hear from Paulina Mendez, a member of the city's Equity and Inclusion team, and we will review just a few policies and procedures which all boards and members must be familiar with. There are several different types of boards, commissions, and committees, including regional boards, quasi-judicial, and appeals boards, as well as advisory boards. In this orientation, we will focus on advisory boards, which make recommendations to council and make up the vast majority of city boards. All advisory boards have been established by council via a resolution or ordinance. These documents spell out why the board was created and include some guidance as to the council's expectations. If you have not already, please review the establishing ordinance for your committee. Your staff liaison and/or chair will be able to provide you with all these documents and will also give you a more specific training relevant to your board. All advisory boards make recommendations to council, and they weigh in on proposed policy and provide input. They do this by gathering input, informing citizens, and exploring alternatives. And next, I will turn it over to Jerri Goldberg, who is the Assistant City Clerk, and will talk to you more about processes and procedures for boards and commissions.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Jerri, and I'd like to also offer my congratulations on your appointment to a city board or commission. There was an orientation booklet that was sent with your appointment letter. It can also be found on the Boards and Commissions webpage. If you haven't already, please review this booklet because much of what we will discuss here is mentioned in that booklet. In addition, your board should update you with additional materials specific to your board, such as enabling resolutions or annual reports. Each city-managed board has a staff liaison. By now, your staff liaison should have reached out to you to provide some details about your duties as a board member. It is important to understand that staff is available for support and guidance of board activities. However, staff does not work for nor at the direction of the committee or its members and should not participate in board deliberations. The role of the board chair is a leadership position with responsibility for keeping the meeting moving by keeping discussion on point and stopping off-topic conversations. The election of the chair should be in the bylaws or rules of procedure of your board. If this is a position you may be interested in, you may find the chair manual with more information on duties and responsibilities on the Boards and Commissions webpage. As a board member, some of your main responsibilities include being proactive, thinking about committee-related issues and potential agenda items, attending meetings. You must attend at least 75% of all meetings to remain a member in good standing. However, full attendance is encouraged. Boards must have a quorum to meet. When members do not attend consistently, it affects the board's ability to conduct its business and meet its charge. Educate yourself on the issues that may come before your board so you may advocate and inform, and also seek input from others when necessary. Communicate with your networks about your board's activities. As a board member, you are exposed to and have a better understanding of city processes and programs. Help get more people involved. To work as a board, the board is granted authority by the city. Individuals are not granted authority. And serve our community. Serving the public is the #1 priority rather than serving any individual or group interest. And be willing to compromise and discuss alternatives. You'll find this may often be necessary to meet the board's charge. Your board's city council liaison is the direct link between your board and council. The liaison will inform the committee of any related long-range issues. While not required to attend your board meetings, the council liaison should receive all agendas and minutes and be kept up to date on all activities. She may provide procedural guidance but will not vote unless a member, and only a few boards have a council member. The liaison will also advance any recommendations the board has. When the committee is ready with a recommendation, the council liaison will work with the city manager to establish next best steps for advancement. Next, Sarah will discuss a little bit about open meeting laws and official meetings.
Thank you, Jerri. Open meeting laws. All official meetings of public bodies, which includes all of the city's boards and commissions, must comply with open meeting laws. In other words, this means that all meetings must be properly noticed, which is sent by us here in the clerk's office, have meeting minutes to include all actions taken at the meeting, and must be open and accessible. Open meeting laws are often referred to as sunshine laws because the intent is to bring light to the meeting and to allow for a greater transparency in the decision-making process. So what is an official meeting? North Carolina open meeting laws define official meetings as a meeting, assembly, or gathering together at any time or place, or the simultaneous communication by conference, telephone, or other electronic means of the majority of the members of the public body for the purpose of conducting hearings, participating in deliberations, voting, or otherwise transacting the public business within the jurisdiction. In other words, an official meeting is any time that you have a majority or more of the committee members deliberating on matters related to the work of the board. For this reason, committees should refrain from the reply all in the email chain to avoid any type of deliberation because email conversations are not open and accessible. Please keep in mind that the purpose of open meeting laws is to provide transparency in the decision-making process. There are some general guidelines that all boards and commissions must follow per the rules and procedures for boards and commissions that has been adopted by the City Council. First, attendance is required. You are required to attend 75% of the meetings held within the calendar year. A quorum is also required to hold an official meeting. This is the majority of the committee members, not to include any vacant seats. Also, the board shall act as a body. Term lengths. Unless otherwise stated, term lengths are typically 3 years, and you are eligible to serve 2 consecutive terms, plus any length of an unexpired term you may be serving. Note that reappointments are not automatic, and they are at the discretion of City Council. The clerk's office tracks terms, and we are responsible for conducting the appointment process. Inclement weather. The policy states that if Asheville City Schools are canceled, any board or commission meeting for that day shall also be canceled. In the event there is a delayed start, it is at the discretion of the chair to cancel the meeting. We will do our best here in the city clerk's office to notice any cancellation of meetings. And finally, social media policy. This policy addresses how employees, as well as city volunteers, use their personal social media accounts. The complete policy can be found on the Boards and Commissions webpage for reference and is also included in your appointment letter. The social media policy that I mentioned applies to city employees, volunteers, and board members and includes a section regarding posting of personal opinion. For all intents and purposes, that should be extended but not limited to public comments, including comments to the media and speaking at public forums. Whenever you identify yourself as a member of a city board, you should include a disclaimer that the opinion is yours and not those of the board or the city of Asheville. If you have any questions about this, reach out to your staff liaison or to the city attorney's office. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jerri.
Rules of procedure are sometimes referred to as bylaws. For our purposes, the terms rules of procedure and bylaws will be used interchangeably. Rules of procedure are specific to each board and may address things like election of officers, member roles, meeting format and procedures, and public comment. There is some flexibility in creating board rules. However, all applicable laws must be followed and they should stay true to the establishing resolution created by council. Should revisions be needed or a new board is formed and new rules need to be created, the city attorney and clerk's office can answer any questions and can assist in drafting or reviewing rules. If something is not addressed in the rules of procedure, Robert's rules and council procedures will be followed. Board members are required to abide by all applicable rules and laws concerning ethical behavior by members of governmental boards and commissions. Board members may not solicit or accept gifts in connection with board service, use city facilities, personnel, equipment, or supplies for private purpose. Members should not vote in matters where there is a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest may include substantial financial, personal, or occupational interest. If a conflict exists, members should be recused from deliberations and voting. There is a duty and expectation to vote, though, if not recused for a conflict. If you are not sure if you have a conflict, contact your staff liaison or the city attorney's office. Members must remain fair and impartial to help maintain the public's confidence in the use of government resources. Council's 2016 strategic vision included 8 core themes with 33 identified goals, more recently drilled down to 13 priorities. Each advisory committee fits into one or more of these identified themes and plays an important role in advancing goals related to these themes. City staff uses this vision with Council's identified priorities and the recommendations made by advisory committees to develop their work plans and proposed budgets. Annual reports are usually due the end of January. This year, because so many boards did not meet regularly due to COVID, the annual report was not required. However, annual reports have been requested with a later deadline. The City Clerk's office provides a template for boards to use. Annual reports are a tool for Council to review board progress. Council may also use the report to assist in developing work plans and budgets. The report is a good opportunity to submit recommendations related to policy issues. Avoid specific monetary budget requests, though. It is staff responsibility to evaluate capacity and costs and will be incorporated in the internal budget request. However, if a goal or recommendation is expected to have a cost associated with it, that should be noted in your report. While staff liaisons are here to assist you, ultimately, annual reports should be completed by committee and not staff. For the next section, Paulina Mendez, with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, will speak about the importance and purpose of equity and inclusion in the work of boards and commissions.
Hi everyone, my name is Paulina Mendez and I'm the training consultant for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. I'd like to join Sarah and Jerri in congratulating you and welcoming you to the city. Thank you so much for your service. At the City of Asheville, we really value equity and inclusion, and I'm humbled to be able to do this work and to be here with you to share a little bit of time to go over why equity and inclusion is important, not only for the City of Asheville, but also for your role as board and commission members. At the City, our working mission is that the Office of Equity and Inclusion fosters a fair and inclusive culture across city government, promotes equitable policies, practices, and procedures, and facilitates improved human relations. What's really important to note is that diversity, inclusion, and equity are not a single concept. We need diversity, but diversity is about quantity, it's about different identities and cultures, and diversity is incredibly important. The more diversity we have, the more we are able to solve complex issues affecting our city, our communities, and our society. So while it's incredibly important, we cannot have diversity if we don't have inclusion. Inclusion speaks to the quality. It looks at participation across identities and culture. So around board and commission tables, do you have a culture of inclusion? Are people willing and able to bring their full selves to participate? When people share their thoughts, are they listened to? Do they feel welcome? Can people participate? But inclusion is also not the end-all be-all because ultimately we're working towards equity. And equity is about justice. We're looking at policies, practices, and procedures to ensure equitable outcomes. So again, while diversity is incredibly important, you need that inclusion, and ultimately we are trying to achieve justice, which looks like equity. So we looked at what equity looks like on the previous slide, but now let's look at equity versus equality, because a lot of people get stuck here. So you've probably seen an image similar to this where you see the depiction of equality and equity. When looking at the definition that we use at the City of Asheville, we use the one on this slide, which is just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. When you look at equality, equality is about sameness, and equity is about providing resources or having policies that give communities what they need in order to succeed. Sometimes equity is just about not putting barriers in place. An example of a barrier that has been put in place historically is redlining. You can look at the policies around redlining and see that they had incredibly detrimental effects for certain communities and not others. So again, while on the surface equality seems like fairness, ultimately we're working to achieve equity, which makes us and asks us to ask a different set of questions, take a holistic approach to strategy, and really look at historical root causes of issues. This is another depiction of equality and equity. So again, with equality, you can see that it's about sameness, but with equity, you can see that people are able to participate, prosper, and thrive. So at the City of Asheville, we're really focused on normalizing, which means that we're working on getting on the same page. We're working on having a shared analysis and definitions, a sense of urgency, and being sure that we're prioritizing equity and inclusion in what we do. The organizing piece is about building internal infrastructure and cultivating external partnerships and collaborations. You need to normalize and organize so that we can ultimately operationalize, which is really where rubber meets the road. This is using racial equity tools, using data to develop strategies, and to drive results. And we're always working on visualizing, making sure that we are engaging community, having a shared vision, and building momentum. At the end of the day, inequitable policies equal inequitable outcomes. You may have heard me refer to redlining earlier, and this is an example of an inequitable policy that has led to inequitable outcomes even here at the City of Asheville. If you look at this map, you can see redlined areas and how it fits like a glove with some of our public housing developments. If you're not familiar with redlining, and if you want to learn more about the history of redlining and urban renewal in Asheville, I'd like to invite you to take Advancing Racial Equity 101. Not too surprisingly, equitable policies equal equitable outcomes, which leads to the curb cut effect. You can learn a little bit more about the curb cut effect in Advancing Racial Equity 101. What's important to remember about equity is that it's not a zero-sum game, which is why we want to work towards having equitable policies and equitable outcomes that benefit our entire community. Again, equity is about taking a holistic approach. It's about asking a certain set of questions, and it is about outcomes. So when we're looking at equitable policies or programs or practices, we want to ask ourselves, who's going to bear the burden from this decision? And are there any unintended consequences? If so, how do we mitigate those? I've already mentioned the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and I really encourage you to go look at their toolkit that they have in their resources. This will help you apply an equity lens to everything that you do. And with that, you're invited. We hope to see you in Advancing Racial Equity 101 and Advancing Racial Equity 201. I just went over some incredibly high-level information for some incredibly complex and nuanced issues. So please come visit. Would love to see you there, and you can check in with your staff liaison on how to sign up. Once again, welcome to the city, and I will turn it back over to Jerri.
The city's website, asheville.nc.gov, has a lot of useful and interesting information. We encourage you to check it out. Each board also has its own page where you can find information relevant to your board, such as past agendas and minutes, and more. You can also email us at boards@asheville.nc.gov with any questions you may have. We're happy to help or find someone who can. In closing, on behalf of the City of Asheville, thank you again for your time and your service. As Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "Many ideas grow better when transplanted into another mind than the one where they sprang up."